The story opens within the familiar, smoke-filled walls of 221B, Baker Street, where Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson are engaged in one of their characteristic intellectual skirmishes. Holmes, reclining in his chair, posits a theory that life is infinitely more daring and strange than any fiction the human mind could conceive. He suggests that if they could hover over London and witness the secret threads of coincidences and cross-purposes, the most extraordinary elements would be found in the most ordinary places. Watson, ever the grounded foil, argues that the cases found in the police reports are usually boring and vulgar. To settle the debate, Holmes points to a woman standing on the pavement outside, hesitating to ring the bell. This is Miss Mary Sutherland, and her arrival marks the beginning of a case that, while lacking a violent crime, provides a masterpiece of psychological manipulation and deductive reasoning. When Miss Sutherland enters, she is a picture of distress mixed with a certain sturdiness. She is a woman of comfortable means, dressed in a way that suggests a lack of coordination, but a presence of wealth. Holmes, through his lightning-fast observation, notes the plush of her sleeves, the marks of pince-nez on her nose, and the mismatched nature of her boots. Before she can even begin her tale, Holmes has deduced that she is a typist, that she is short-sighted, and that she has come in a state of high agitation. Mary Sutherland explains that she has come to Holmes because her stepfather, Mr. James Windibank, refuses to take the disappearance of her fiancé, Mr. Hosmer Angel, seriously. Mary's background is essential to understanding the gravity of the situation. Her father was a plumber who left a thriving business, which her mother sold to a man named Mr. Hardy. However, the family retained a significant amount of stock, providing Mary with an annual income of £100, a substantial sum for a single woman in the late 19th century. Her mother had since remarried a man named James Windibank, who was significantly younger than her mother and worked as a traveling wine salesman. Despite her financial independence, Mary lives a quiet, almost stifled life at home, turning over her income to her family to keep the household running smoothly. The mystery begins at the gasfitter's ball. Mary explains that her stepfather, Mr. Windibank, was vehemently against her attending social functions and often used his business trips as an excuse to keep the women of the house isolated. However, on one occasion when Windibank was away in France, Mary and her mother attended the ball, where she met the mysterious Mr. Hosmer Angel. He was a man of peculiar habits. He spoke in a low, hushed whisper, wore tinted glasses to protect his supposedly weak eyes, and was painfully shy. Despite this, a whirlwind romance ensued. The courtship was conducted under strange constraints. Hosmer Angel would only visit when Mr. Windibank was away on business. When Mary suggested waiting until her stepfather returned so they could meet, Hosmer insisted that it was unnecessary. Their communication was equally odd. Hosmer never wrote by hand. Every letter he sent, including the signature, was produced on a typewriter. He claimed that his eyes were so weak that the sight of his own handwriting was painful to him. Mary, being of a trusting and perhaps somewhat naive nature, accepted these explanations without question. The relationship culminated in a proposal of marriage. Hosmer Angel seemed obsessed with Mary's loyalty. On the morning of their wedding, he made her swear a dramatic oath on the Bible, promising that even if something unforeseen happened, she would remain true to him and wait for him indefinitely. As they headed to the church in separate cabs, Mary with her mother and Hosmer alone, the unthinkable happened. When Hosmer's cab arrived at the church doors, the driver opened the door to find the vehicle empty. Hosmer Angel had vanished into thin air during the short drive through the London streets. Following the disappearance, Mary was distraught. Her mother seemed surprisingly resigned, and her stepfather, upon his return from France, scoffed at the idea of foul play, suggesting that Hosmer had simply realized he was in over his head and fled. But Mary could not accept this. She spent her savings on advertisements in the newspapers and finally sought the help of the great detective. Once Mary leaves Baker Street, Holmes's demeanor shifts from empathetic listener to cold analyst. He does not rush out to the scene of the disappearance. Instead, he asks Watson to examine the letters Mary left behind. Holmes has already formulated a theory. He writes 2 letters, one to Mr. Windibank's employers and another to Mr. Windibank himself, inviting him to the office the following evening. While waiting for the reply, Holmes explains his logic to Watson. He focuses on the typewriter. In the Victorian era, typewriters were relatively new, and Holmes realized that, like handwriting, every machine has individual flaws, a chipped letter E, a slightly crooked R. Upon comparing the letters written by Hosmer Angel to a letter sent by James Windibank regarding a business matter, Holmes finds an exact match in every mechanical defect. The truth is a cold-blooded scheme of domestic manipulation. James Windibank did not want to lose the 100 pounds a year that Mary contributed to the household. To prevent her from marrying and taking her money with her, he decided to provide her with a lover himself. Using his frequent business trips as a cover, he disguised himself with tinted glasses, a fake beard, and a muffled voice to become Hosmer Angel. He wooed his own stepdaughter, knowing that by eventually vanishing and forcing her into a vow of fidelity, he could keep her single and heartbroken for years, ensuring the money stayed in his pocket. The climax occurs when Windibank arrives at 221B Baker Street. He is arrogant, believing he has committed no legal crime. When Holmes confronts him with the evidence of the typewriter and the logistical impossibility of Hosmer's existence, Windibank doesn't deny it. He sneeringly points out that the law cannot touch him. Technically, he is right. There is no law against breaking a heart through a masquerade. However, Holmes's sense of justice is not bound by the Victorian legal code. Disgusted by the man's predatory behavior toward his own family, Holmes locks the door and picks up a hunting crop, threatening to give Windibank the thrashing he deserves. The villain, terrified, bolts out of the room and down the stairs. In the aftermath, Watson asks if Holmes will tell Mary Sutherland the truth. Holmes decides against it. He believes that she is so deeply invested in the memory of Hosmer that she would not believe him. And even if she did, the truth would be more crushing than the mystery. He predicts that Windibank will continue his path of deceit until he commits a crime that finally brings him to the gallows. The case ends with Holmes returning to his chemistry and his violin, having solved a puzzle that was, as he predicted, far stranger than any fiction.